Yo, what's going on, you guys? This is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, bringing you a video breakdown. And it is here, guys. It's finally here. We're finally getting a Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII remake, and I couldn't be any more excited about this because this thing has a long-standing history with this channel. Some of my long-term subscribers may know that Final Fantasy VII has been a big part of this channel. I actually uploaded a compilation of cutscenes which consisted of Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII and Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII, which are both part of the Final Fantasy VII compilation. So yeah, man, a long-standing history with this channel, and actually something that just takes me back to my early roots of being a gamer. I always had a certain affinity towards that particular arc of the Final Fantasy franchise, and it'll continue to stay with me. I've always wanted to see this game remade because there was a lot of stuff that we really wanted that we couldn't get on the PSP due to hardware limitations and peripherals, one of which includes camera control. That's something that was lacking in the original version, but now it looks like we're going to get that. Not only are we going to get a better camera control perspective, but we're also going to be getting an HD overhaul. Character models are going to be remade from the ground up. Environment's going to be HDified with better textures that fully take advantage of next-gen hardware. But not only that, it's going to be a cross-generational title, which basically means people who aren't lucky enough to have the PS5 and Xbox Series X, but just so happen to have the PS4 and Xbox One, can play this game as well, just on lesser performing hardware. So yeah, it's a win-win for everybody. And not to mention that it's coming to the Switch. You know, the Switch hasn't always had the best of luck since it is the lesser of all the different platforms. But I think it's just a beautiful thing that a lot of people are going to be playing this game on the go once again. And that's one of the novelties that I've always enjoyed about Crisis Core. Having that on-the-go experience, pulling a game out of your pocket and putting on your headphones and just enjoying the hell out of this game. But yeah, guys, I am really just loving this, man. Based off simple observation, you can tell that this game is going to have a graphical overhaul, meaning that everything is going to be redone from the ground up in terms of aesthetic, which means like HDified textures, a lot of things that the PSP couldn't handle. They're just going to be going into overdrive and utilizing this next-gen hardware, and I cannot wait, man. Like, everything just looks so good. But at the heart of it all, the game retains a lot of the things that the original had, and that includes the motion capture. Like, everything in terms of movements, from what I remember, it feels like the same thing, except they just have a HD Unreal Engine facelift. From the characters to even the backgrounds, everything just looks beautiful. And I know a lot of people are going to argue that this just doesn't feel right because it does feel a little dated compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which came out a couple years ago, but that's just the beauty and the novelty of it that I like. I think we tend to forget that Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core was running on a less powerful hardware, the PSP, which does kind of captivate audiences with some of the things they can do compared to the PS2, but it doesn't quite hit the benchmarks as the PS2 could hit, which kind of led to some of the textures looking a little bit flat, like they're drawn on the characters like Zack. But yeah, you know, it gets the job done, and that's basically what this game is doing. It's not trying to be the best looking game, but it is doing enough to make it feel like a breath of fresh air. Everything, it has textures that boast a lot of hardware fidelity, and I don't think that the YouTube's video of this does it justice, because as you know, YouTube compresses the hell out of videos, which kind of depletes some of the value. But I think once we get our hands on it, especially the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and Steam versions, you're gonna really see this game shine. Because like I said, you're getting better camera angles, you're getting better controls, and you're getting better visuals on top of that. With all of that said, something that a lot of people, including myself, aren't going to be happy about is the newly recorded voice performers, because for one, they pale in comparison to the original. Rick Gomez did an exceptional job, including Steve Burden and George Newborn. They just brought it, man. The performances, while wonky at first in the original, they do get a lot better, especially with characters like Angel and Genesis. Like, they just really grow into those characters. And the remake cast, they were awesome, man. I really loved that. But I think it's accredited to the actual voice performance of the characters and the dialogue that they were given. That's what makes Final Fantasy VII vastly superior to what we were given in the earlier years, like when Steve Burden and George Newborn were voicing these characters. But given the fact that they are basically lifting a lot of the original material, the original dialogue for Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, That's what's gonna really hurt this game, because the new voice actor for Zack, he sounds like a snotty-nosed brat. And I guess that is fitting for Zack in this version of Crisis Core, because we do get two versions. We get a young, youthful version of Zack, and we get a more mature version of Zack. But I think Rick Gomez did an exceptional job nailing the performance of Zack and getting it right. You know, that's like one of the first voice actors we've ever gotten for Zack Fair, and he just did an exceptional job. But the new guy, he just does not sound good, especially from what we've heard up in these trailers. So yeah, having a new guy and having that old dialogue, which was already kind of rough, it's gonna take some getting used to, or I might just have to switch to the Japanese audio. Something else that I know a lot of people are hoping is that they do give us an option to hear the original voices, but I don't think that's gonna be the case with this game, because unfortunately, a lot of stuff that was in the original was not recorded, which meant like certain characters with incidental dialogue would just have text. It wasn't really any audio to go along with it, because that's just how it was in the yesteryears of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts games. You walk up to a character, you press X, and you just get like a big text of dialogue. But up in these newer Final Fantasy games, we are actually getting fully recorded dialogue for a lot of instances, and that's how this game is going to be. It's going to have dialogue for all the missing parts, you know, like parts that just didn't have any dialogue. If you remember, characters like Yuffie Kusanagi didn't have any audio dialogue recorded. Everything was just basically rendered in text. And when you go to Nibelheim, Tifa doesn't even have any audio recorded dialogue. Everything else was just in text. And there are a lot of pivotal moments that kind of make this game awkward. And once again, it was probably due to the hardware limitations, and that's just the way Square did things. But this game right here is going to have all fully voice acted dialogue, and there's also going to be new arrangements for the soundtrack, which is a plus. So if they wanted to bring back the original voice cast, they would have to re-record some lines. You know, they can't just uplift the original audio from the game. They'll have to actually get them to record some additional lines. So yeah, I don't think we'll be seeing that. But I do think we'll be seeing modders find a way around that and probably just put the original voice acted lines in just to make it somewhat feasible to get through the game. Or they'll just, you know, like I say, suggest like you just go through the Japanese audio. But besides that, let's just look at the heads up display of this game, because the HUD, it looks absolutely beautiful. It looks vastly superior. It definitely puts it in line with Final Fantasy VII Remake's heads up display, which has a very sleeker, very good presentation, and it doesn't look as clunky as the original looked. That's something that I always want to see get a remake, because like even when you play this game on an emulated PSSPP, it looks wonky, it looks flat. It kind of is a little bit intrusive, but now it seems like you have more screen space to see Zack run around in, and everything just looks a lot better in terms of presentation. In terms of the digital mind wave, or the DMW, there hasn't really been any details shown about that. I don't think that was even really showcased to its fullest up in the trailer, but it seems like it's going to remain the same unless Square Enix decides to implement something where you can have more control over that. Because if you guys remember, the DMW was basically just this random sporadic thing that just does what it wants to do, and if you have like certain little elements like Zack's enthusiasm or something boosted, you know, it could hinge off of that, you know, based off of like certain scenarios. If he's excited, you might get a better outcome with the DMW, which is basically like this roulette slot machine. So yeah, I'm hoping that that's somewhat touched up. Now, in terms of the visual aesthetic, if you guys notice, this game is trying to remain very consistent with the continuity of Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you guys remember back in 2017, that's one of the things that Tetsuya Nomura answered why there wasn't necessarily going to be a remake for this game at first, because it didn't connect with what Final Fantasy VII Remake was trying to be, which was its own thing. You know, the proof is in the name of Final Fantasy Remake. It's not a beat-for-beat copy of the original Final Fantasy VII story, but it does take creative liberties to connect the two universes together. It basically establishes itself as an alternate universe, and somehow they're going to bring over certain elements from the original Final Fantasy VII universe into this one, and I think that's why they decided to come out with this, because somehow I have a nagging suspicion they're going to find a way to interconnect this game with Remake. And if I'm not mistaken, they might try to do something with the ending, because we ultimately see Zack die, you know, from all the different soldiers shooting him up. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling a lot of stuff, but yeah, in the original run, we basically see him die. But at the end of Final Fantasy Remake, he somehow survives because Cloud and gang, they just somehow override fate, which is what Sephiroth wants. And Sephiroth is basically the same Sephiroth from the Final Fantasy VII compilation. So there's probably going to be a way for them to interconnect this and show different things that we haven't seen before. You know, they'll probably try to integrate certain things that we haven't seen, because one thing that I've noticed about all of these redesigns, some of them have been lifted from Remake. Like, we get a shot of Type O Bahamut right here, and as you can see, he looks just like he did in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, you get a chance to see that character, and the model looks like he's been lifted from that. You also get a chance to see Final Fantasy VII version of Ifrit up in there too. It's like everything has been given an awesome facelift, and some of the things we've seen in Remake have just been repurposed for this game, which is awesome. Like I said, it makes it more consistent with what we saw up in Remake, if they're trying to take this game and basically just ingrain it up in this universe. Another thing that I want you guys to take a look at is the sword, the Buster Sword. It's also been given a facelift, and it's kind of like this weird uncanny valley, right? Because I'm thinking that they just fully changed this scene where we see Zack embracing his dreams as soldier and just going in for the attack, because it looks like they've taken the original FMV cinematic, but they've been giving it touches too. Like, they changed the Buster Sword to look more consistent with how it looked up in Remake, because it has the original hilt, but it also has the Advent Children sword like gravings and stuff like that on the sword. So yeah, a lot of different things. Other characters such as Genesis, they've been giving redesigns and touch-ups, and I'm expecting to see some of the Turks get similar designs as well. I mean, this is kind of like a game that takes place a few years before the events of the original Final Fantasy VII, so a lot of characters are going to look a little younger, so that kind of has me wondering if they're actually going to just lift characters like Reno and Rouge's designs from Remake. Who knows, but I am digging it, man. I am really just loving this. But anyways, guys, yeah, that's it, man. I know this is all over the place, but I am just excited for this game, and I just had to give you guys an update because, like I say, man, I'm trying to, I'm trying to just branch away from Transformers and just give you things that I just love, in terms of just video games. We're taking it back to the basics. It's not going to be all about Spider-Man and Transformers. Let's just talk about some video games. But anyways, I want to know your thoughts on this. How are you liking the design overall? Are you loving it? Are you hating it? Do you think they could have did a lot better? I think it's perfectly fine. Like I say, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, it wasn't really just trying to be the best graphical looking game because of hardware limitations. It was just right, and I feel like this game is just right as well. It does just enough. You have a better frame rate, you have better camera controls, better textures overall. But yeah, give your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, I ask you to like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and family members on social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.